The next morning, I woke up to the sound of wind rattling the windows. The weather matched my mood: gray, restless, full of things that refused to settle. My mom's voice from the night before still echoed in my head. Drop it, as if a simple command could undo the storm that had already started inside me. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, then I'd find it myself. I started with the public library. It wasn't exactly the FBI archives, but in a small town like ours, the local newspaper's back issues were the closest thing to a time machine. I headed straight to the microfilm machine in the corner, where a volunteer librarian, a thin woman with a braid down her back, helped me pull up reels from the summer of 1973. It didn't take long to find it. Local teen killed in single car accident. The article was only a few paragraphs long. It said Samuel Carter, 19, had been driving home from work late at night when his truck failed to navigate a sharp turn on County Highway 12. No mention of alcohol, no weather issues, no mechanical failure. Just an accident. But there was one sentence that made my stomach knot. Witnesses reported hearing loud voices near Carter's vehicle earlier in the evening, but police have ruled out foul play. Voices, like the man on the road had told me. I scanned the rest of the paper and noticed another article, smaller, easy to overlook, about a heated town council meeting that same week. One of the attendees was a man named William Harper. My eyes caught on the name because Grandma's diary mentioned Mr. Harper once in passing when she described her parents' circle of friends. It was a long shot, but something in my gut told me it mattered. When I got home, I pulled out the diary again and reread every entry from that summer. That's when I noticed it. Half a sentence I'd skimmed over before. Samuel said Harper warned him to leave town, said it was for his own good. I didn't believe him. I thought it was just another scare tactic from my parents' friends. Harper. If this was the same man, then he hadn't just known about Samuel, he'd actively told him to get out. And yet, a day later, Samuel was dead. I needed to know if Harper was still alive. A quick online search told me he was, and living just 15 minutes away in a retirement home on the edge of town. My hands were clammy as I drove there. The place was quiet, the kind of sterile quiet that comes from too many linoleum floors and not enough laughter. A nurse pointed me toward the common room, where I spotted him, white-haired, hunched, his hands resting on a cane. "Mr. Harper?" I asked softly. He looked up, his eyes surprisingly sharp for someone his age. "Do I know you? I'm Mary Collins' granddaughter." For a split second, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe even guilt, but it was gone just as fast. "What do you want?" I hesitated, then just said it. "I'm trying to understand what happened to Samuel Carter. The night before he died, you warned him to leave town. Why? His knuckles tightened on the cane. You shouldn't be digging into that, girl. I'm already digging, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Please. My grandmother's gone. My father's gone. I just want the truth. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. Your grandmother was a good woman. Too good for the mess her family pulled her into. Back then, your great-grandfather had business dealings, not all of them legal. Samuel found out something he shouldn't have. What kind of something? The kind that could have put your great-grandfather in prison, he said flatly. I warned Sam because I liked the boy, told him to take your grandma and go, but he wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to her. That night, someone followed him after he left her house. My chest tightened. Who? Harper shook his head slowly. Names don't matter now. Most of them are dead. But understand this, your grandma didn't just lose the man she loved. She lived with the fear that whoever silenced him would come for her if she talked. The weight of his words settled over me like a lead blanket. I thanked him quietly and left, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. If my great-grandfather had been involved in something criminal, and Samuel knew about it, then my family had been keeping secrets for generations. When I got back to Grandma's house, I sat on her bed, staring at the diary. Part of me wanted to slam it shut, lock it in a box, and pretend I'd never found it. But another part, the bigger part, needed to finish the story. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. Inside the back cover, there was a flap of leather slightly lifted at the edge. I ran my fingernail under it and felt paper, thin, folded. I pulled it out carefully, my hands trembling. It was a photograph, black and white, slightly torn at the corner. It showed Samuel standing beside his truck, smiling, and next to him, a man I recognized from old family photos. My great-grandfather. The date scrawled on the back was the night Samuel died. I stared at the photograph like it might burn me if I held it too long. Samuel, smiling. My great-grandfather, stone-faced. The date on the back sealing the moment in time. The night he died. It didn't make sense. Why would they be together? And why did my grandmother never mention it? The questions burned inside me so fiercely that I didn't even think about what time it was before calling my mom again. This time, she answered on the first ring. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I found a photograph of Samuel with your grandfather, taken the night he died. For a moment, there was only breathing on the other end. Then, you need to stop. No, I snapped. I'm done stopping. Tell me the truth. Did Grandpa have something to do with Samuel's death? Her voice broke, but her words came out sharp. It's not that simple. Yes, It is. Either he did or he didn't. I could hear her swallow. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quiet. He didn't mean to. At least, I don't think he did. I sat down hard on the bed. What happened? She sighed, the sound heavy enough to fill the space between us. Your grandfather found out Samuel planned to take your grandma away that night, and he couldn't let that happen. Not after Samuel learned about the money. What money? There was a deal, she said. Illegal. Grandpa had taken money from people in town. If the wrong person talked, everything would come crashing down. Samuel was asking questions. Too many questions. Grandpa told him to leave, and when he wouldn't, her voice faltered. They argued by the road. Samuel drove off in a hurry. Grandpa followed to try to calm him down. But on that curve, her words trailed off into silence. I closed my eyes, my mind filling in the blanks she didn't say. Whether it was an accident or not, my great-grandfather had been there. Grandma knew? I asked. Yes, she whispered. But she also knew what it would do to the family if the truth came out. She lost the man she loved and had to smile at the man who caused it every Sunday at dinner. She protected you from all of it. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. And you? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to protect you too. Some things, once you know them, they live in you forever. I looked at the diary on the bed, at the photograph still trembling in my hands. She was right about one thing. Now that I knew, I couldn't unknow it. After we hung up, I stayed there for a long time, staring at the quilt Grandma had made me. Every stitch was perfect, every square a memory. But now I realized there was another layer beneath those patterns, a pain she had stitched into silence, a truth she had carried alone for decades. I didn't know what to do with it all. Part of me wanted to tell the world. Another part wanted to bury it back in the bookshelf and never speak of it again. That night, I took the diary and the photograph to the old rose garden behind her house. The roses were starting to fade with the season, but they still smelled like summer. I sat there on the cold stone bench, reading the last page one more time. If you've made it this far, you know the story. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you in person, but I hope you'll understand my silence was my way of keeping you safe. You are the best part of my life, and I need you to remember this. You come from love, not from the mistakes or the cruelty of others. Let that be your truth, even if the rest of it is heavy. I pressed the diary to my chest, tears blurring the roses into pink smudges. Grandma had been right. Truth could poison a family, but it could also free you if you were strong enough to hold it. In the end, I didn't destroy the diary. I wrapped it in the quilt and placed it in my own closet, high on the shelf where I knew it would stay safe. Maybe one day, when I have children of my own, I'll tell them. Not to hurt them, but so they'll know that our family's story isn't just the smiling photographs and the Sunday dinners. It's also the unspoken battles, the love that survived loss, and the courage it takes to carry a truth when it would be easier to hide it. And when they ask me about my grandma, I'll tell them this. She wasn't just a sweet old lady who baked cookies and told stories. She was a fighter. She was a survivor. And she loved me enough to carry the weight of the truth so I wouldn't have to until now. By the time I was 23, high school felt like a bad dream I'd mostly outgrown. I was living in Philadelphia, finishing up my master's degree in journalism, working part-time at a local coffee shop to make ends meet. My hair was shorter now, I wore bolder clothes, and I'd learned how to carry myself like someone who wasn't afraid of the world anymore. I'd built a small but tight-knit group of friends who didn't know anything about my high school past, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, Emily walked into my life again. Literally. I was behind the counter at the coffee shop, wiping down the espresso machine, when I heard the bell above the door ring. I glanced up, and there she was. Older, yes, her curls a little looser, her makeup more polished, but still unmistakably Emily. The same green eyes, the same smile that once felt like home. Except now, my stomach twisted when I saw it. She froze when she recognized me, and for a split second, I thought she might turn around and leave. But instead, she walked up to the counter like nothing had happened. "Lily," she said softly. "Wow, it's been a long time." "Yeah," I said flatly, keeping my hands busy with the cloth. "It has." There was a pause. Then she ordered a latte, like this was just another casual day. When I handed it to her, she didn't take it right away. "Listen, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but could we talk? Please?" Just for a few minutes. I wanted to say no. Every part of me screamed to say no. But something in her voice, or maybe just my own need for closure, made me nod. We sat in the corner booth, the rain streaking down the window beside us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she took a deep breath. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything I did in high school. I was awful to you. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back." I stared at her, my arms crossed. "Why now, Emily? It's been 8 years. Why do you suddenly care?" Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "Because I need to tell you the truth. The real reason I told your secret." I let out a bitter laugh. "The real reason? You mean it wasn't just because you wanted to impress your little cheer squad?" She shook her head. "No, it wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about protecting you." That made me laugh harder, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Protecting me? You humiliated me in front of the entire school, Emily. That's your idea of protection? I know how it sounds, she said quickly, but it's the truth. Back then, someone else already knew. Someone dangerous. And they were threatening to tell everyone in the worst possible way. I thought, if I told it first, it would hurt less, that I could control the narrative. I blinked at her. You control the narrative by making me a punchline for 2 years? Her voice cracked. I was 17, Lily. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was helping you. I shook my head, my chest tight. If you'd just told me, I could have handled it myself. But you didn't give me that choice. You took it from me. She looked down at her hands. I know, and I hate myself for it. There was another long silence. My latte had gone cold. Outside, the rain kept falling, blurring the view of the street. Finally, I asked, who was it? Who was threatening me? Emily hesitated, biting her lip. It was someone you know, someone you trusted. Something in her voice made my skin prickle. Who? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. I can't tell you. Not yet. But I will. I promise. I scoffed. Oh, great. Another promise. We know how those turn out. She flinched, but didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across the table. If you ever want to talk again, here's my number. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I hope you'll give me one. I didn't pick up the paper. I just watched her leave, the bell above the door ringing again, the cold air rushing in behind her. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in my head. Someone dangerous. Someone I knew. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd spent years moving on, and I wasn't about to let Emily drag me back into the past. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't be able to let it go. Not until I knew the truth.
I lasted 3 days. 3 days of pretending Emily's reappearance hadn't cracked something open inside me. 3 days of telling myself her dangerous person story was just another lie to make herself feel better. 3 days of ignoring that folded piece of paper, until I finally found myself digging it out of the trash at midnight, smoothing out the creases. Her number was written in the same loopy handwriting she'd had in middle school. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I put it in my wallet without calling. Instead, I decided to do my own digging. The first step was reaching out to someone I hadn't spoken to since high school, Mia Reynolds. She had been in my grade, a quiet but observant girl who somehow knew everything about everyone. Back then, she'd been one of the few people who didn't openly mock me after the rumor spread, though she hadn't exactly stood up for me either. I found her on Instagram. She still lived in our hometown, working at a local bookstore. When I messaged her, I expected her to ignore me. Instead, she replied almost instantly. Hey, Lily. Wow, it's been forever. Yeah, I remember all that. Honestly, I always thought there was more to the story. Want to meet up? 2 days later, I was sitting in a booth at a small diner off the highway, nursing a coffee when Mia slid into the seat across from me. She looked almost exactly the same, just older, same dark eyes, same messy ponytail. Okay, she said, leaning forward. What's this about? I hesitated. Do you remember? The rumor? About me? Back in high school? She raised an eyebrow. Of course I do. Everyone does. It was brutal. Emily told me last week that she didn't start it to be cruel. She said someone else already knew and was planning to use it against me. She claimed she was protecting me. Mia tilted her head. And you believe her? No, I said quickly. But I want to know if there's any truth to it. Did you ever hear who else knew before it went public? Mia's expression shifted. I never knew for sure. But I remember something weird. A couple weeks before it blew up, I was at a party at Jason Clark's house. I overheard him talking to someone about having leverage on you. I didn't know what it meant at the time. But when the rumor came out, I figured that's what he was talking about. My stomach dropped. Jason Clark, quarterback, class clown, and the kind of guy who thought cruelty was just a form of entertainment. He'd been in a lot of my classes, and while we'd never been close, he'd always had this way of making me feel small. Did Emily ever hang out with him? I asked. Mia nodded slowly. A few times. Through her boyfriend, I think. Why? I sat back, my mind racing. If Jason knew, maybe he was the one who threatened her. Maybe she told him, thinking she could trust him, and he used it to scare her into doing his dirty work. Or, Mia said carefully, maybe she was just covering for herself and threw him into the story to make you feel bad for her. I knew she was right. Both options were possible. After we parted ways, I drove around aimlessly for a while, trying to process everything. The idea that Jason Clark had been behind this all along made my skin crawl. But it also made me angry, angrier than I'd been in years. That night, I dug through an old box in my closet. Inside were yearbooks, photos, and a battered spiral notebook from high school. Flipping through it was like opening a time capsule of pain, notes Emily and I had passed in class, inside jokes, and doodles of our BFF bracelet design. Then I found something I'd completely forgotten about, a folded sheet of notebook paper with messy handwriting scrawled across it. It was from Jason. Back then, I dismissed it as just another stupid note he'd slipped onto my desk. But reading it now, my chest tightened. You think no one knows, but I do. And I can make sure everyone else knows too. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I remembered his smirk when I'd found it, the way he'd winked at me across the room. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. Emily had been telling the truth, at least partly. Someone had been threatening to out me, but that didn't erase what she'd done. She still could have come to me. She still could have given me a choice. And if Jason really was the one pulling the strings, I wanted answers. The problem was, Jason had left town years ago. According to Facebook, he lived in New York now, working in real estate. Still, I had a phone number, one I wasn't even sure still worked. It was almost midnight when I sent the text. Jason, it's Lily Morgan. We need to talk. You know what it's about. No response. Until the next morning. Meet me in person. Saturday. O'Malley's Bar. 8 p.m. No smiley faces, no casual tone. Just cold, direct words. I stared at my phone for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend I'd never sent it. But another part of me, the part that had carried this weight for 8 years, knew I had to go. If Emily was telling the truth, this could change everything. If she wasn't, I'd finally have proof. Either way, I was done running from the ghosts of high school. Saturday night came faster than I wanted it to. O'Malley's Bar was the kind of dimly lit place where time seemed to move slower, where the air smelled like old beer and fried food. I got there early, choosing a booth in the corner where I could see the door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought people might hear it. At exactly 8:03 p.m., Jason Clark walked in. He looked older, but not better. His once boyish face had hardened, His hair was thinning at the temples, and there was something in his eyes that spoke of years of too many nights like this one. Still, when he spotted me, his smirk came back instantly. "Lily Morgan," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "Cut the small talk," I said. "You know why I'm here." He leaned back, studying me. "Ah, so Emily finally spilled, huh?" My stomach tightened. "So it was you. You were the one threatening to tell my secret." Jason didn't even blink. "Guilty. But you know what's funny? I never actually planned to tell anyone. I just liked watching you squirm." The casual cruelty in his voice made my skin crawl. "You're disgusting." He shrugged, as if I just commented on the weather. What can I say? I was a bored teenager with too much power over people who cared too much about what others thought. "And Emily." He chuckled. "Emily was easy to scare. I told her if she didn't tell the story first, I'd do it, and I'd make it worse. I might have mentioned photos even though I didn't have any." I gripped the edge of the table. "So she believed you, and she threw me under the bus." Jason grinned. "Pretty much. You should have seen her face. She was terrified. Guess you weren't the only one with secrets." That last sentence hit me like a slap. "What do you mean?" He shrugged again, almost bored now. "Let's just say Emily had her own little skeletons. Stuff she didn't want getting out. So she did what she had to do to keep me quiet." My mind reeled. Emily's betrayal wasn't just about me. It was about protecting herself. She'd sacrificed me to save her own image. I pushed back from the table. "Thanks for confirming what I already knew." Jason smirked. "Anytime, sweetheart." I walked out of O'Malley's feeling like my legs were made of stone. The cold night air hit me, but it didn't clear my head. If anything, it made the weight in my chest heavier. Emily had been telling the truth, partially. Jason had threatened her. But she'd still made a choice. She could have told me. She could have asked for my help. Instead, she decided my humiliation was worth her safety. When I got home, I stared at my phone for a long time before finally typing a message. "I talked to Jason. I know everything." Her reply came almost instantly. "Can we meet? Please?" We agreed to meet the next morning at a quiet park near my apartment. It was cold, the grass wet with frost, and the trees stood bare against the pale winter sky. Emily was already there when I arrived, her hands shoved deep into her coat pockets. "You saw him," she said. "I did," I replied. "He told me you were scared. That you thought if you told my secret first, you could control the damage." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was terrified, Lily. Jason had this way of making you believe he could ruin your life with a single word. And he knew things about me, things no one else knew. I thought, if I gave him what he wanted, he'd leave me alone. And you decided I was the thing he wanted." My voice cracked. "You chose yourself over me." She didn't deny it. "I did, and I regret it every single day. I was 17, selfish, and scared. I thought I was protecting us both, but all I did was destroy you." The wind cut between us, sharp and cold. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I wasn't being cruel for the sake of it. I was trying to survive." I looked at her, really looked at her. The girl who had once been my other half was gone. Standing in front of me was a woman I barely recognized, a woman shaped by fear, mistakes, and the same small-town pressure that had nearly crushed me. "I believe you," I said quietly. "But believing you doesn't mean I can forget what you did." Her tears spilled over. "I know." We stood there for another minute, two people bound by a shared past that neither of us could rewrite. Then I turned and walked away, my boots crunching on the frost. By the time I reached the end of the path, I felt lighter. Not because I'd forgiven her, I hadn't, but because I finally understood. The wound she'd left in me had been festering for 8 years, fed by questions I never thought I'd get answers to. Now, I had them, and I could finally let go. Not of the memory, not of the lesson, but of the power it had over me. Sometimes closure doesn't come wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop carrying someone else's choices on your back. And for the first time since I was 16, I felt like I could breathe again.